The movement either would make you or break you. You had to be committed. It was a commitment to me. And I think the commitment came from above. I'm from Albany, Georgia. You know, white people didn't bother us down there. We didn't tolerate that at all. And it wasn't about no nonviolence at that time. You know, we was just not wanted to be bothered. So we had most of the things there was, we had grocery stores. We had everything but a bank in the African-American community. I went to Albany State on a football scholarship, and I broke a shoulder in 1958. Well, I knew then I wasn't going to the National Football League, so I said, well, I'm going to do something different. I moved to New York and swore I was never coming back down south no more. I was through at the South, I thought, forever. But they was demonstrating in Albany, Georgia. And these guys were getting shelled around, pushed around, and I knew these people. I said, well, you know, this don't seem right to me. I'm going home and get involved with whatever's going on down there. And I did. I went to Albany. I got to Albany on a Wednesday, and I was locked up on Thursday. Martin Luther King came to Albany, and they created a scenario in Albany that's where Martin Luther King fell. Well, Albany was one of the first cities that really started mass marches and mass meetings, and we talk about 500-600 people every night. We had voices down there, and we created all of the freedom songs. And these young people was very dynamic in the singing part of that. The movement there, people said it was a failure, but I didn't think so. People got out of debt in Albany. They didn't do no shopping. They wouldn't ride no buses. They didn't do anything. They kept their money in their pocket and paid off their bills. We kind of promoted that. So if anything did happen, that did happen down there. For about 3.5 years, we didn't do no Christmas shopping and we didn't do anything. So those folks didn't have no bills and no debts, and some of it paid off them homes they had. So they was happy. You know, that created a little happiness. Martin Luther King used to tell us, if we haven't found something worth dying for, we're not fit to live no way. That's a serious statement. So you either believe it or you don't believe it. So I think I kind of believed it. Willie Bolden was from Savannah, and he and a guy named Ben Clark, some of them they was in St. Augustine with Jose Williams. And we was at Albany. So he came asking, they needed some help from us down there. We took a bus and we went down. And they spent about 2 weeks down there. I spent a little longer because I was asked to become a part of SCLC, and I did. That's how we got to St. Augustine, and we marched every day and every night. We 3 times a day they'd beat us up. Our hospital bills was higher than our bond bills in St. Augustine, Florida. The news was kind of slow from some of the demonstrations we was doing, and they didn't want to show all the beatings and all of that. We didn't have social media, but we had sense enough to know if we demonstrated at 4:30 and 5 o'clock, we'd be on the evening news. We knew that. And that was the only way we could communicate across this country, and we planned those things. We made sure we was doing some time for the 6 o'clock news. So, and we did. And that's what happened in St. Augustine, Florida. So we decided, Jose came to me and said they wouldn't feed Dr. Abernathy and Dr. King was trying to have breakfast at the Monson Motor Inn, and they wouldn't let them in. So Jose said, well, that's a good place we can go. We can talk about that swimming pool. I didn't have a bathing suit. That's what, I go, but I don't have it. So Bolden had he had a bathing suit. He said, well, you could use mine. I said, okay then. So we did, and we jumped in that pool, and that created a whole new look in St. Augustine, and everybody knew it from that acid that they put in the water. That picture that Senator McGovern he lived in St. Augustine. He was from the Dakotas out there, but he had a house out there, and he said that he was there. And he went back to Washington and asked the president that had he seen this picture. And President Johnson didn't see it. He turned the television on. He said, well, you need to see. That picture went all over the world. The president said that, and he said, we can't tolerate this kind of action, this kind of stuff going on in Florida with young people getting acid poured on them. So they did, and the 2nd of July, they passed the Civil Rights Bill. Well, that was worth whatever they did to us. To me, it was. We were lucky enough to convince St. Augustine not to get violent. We'd march by the guy, Mr. Monson, who threw the acid. We'd march by his house at night. His daughter wanted to apologize. Well, I told her I didn't need no apology. What I need to do is see a change. Don't apologize to me, just change your town. We have to change the way we feel and the way we treat each other. We have to go back to, I'm going to treat my neighbor right. You ain't got to fall in love with me, but you got to respect me as a man. Not as a black man, but as a man. But we have to have that respect somewhere. And that generates some kind of a conversation once you respect the person. The conversation gets started. Then we figure out who knows what happens after that.